Thank you, and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here back in Manila, just after 3 years, and I'm very grateful to the Chancellor of UPOU, Professor Melinda Bandelaria, for the invitation. Dr. Patricia Rinto has been very gracious in her communications, and it's always a pleasure to work with her. The University of the Philippines Open University has been designated the National Center of Excellence in Open Learning and Distance Education in recognition of its pioneering work in opening up education to the many who otherwise would never have had the opportunity. So it's appropriate that UPOU is hosting AAOU 2016 on the theme of opening up education in Asia. AAOU is a very vibrant and dynamic forum, and CALL is very happy and proud to keep supporting it. Because of the huge diversity and spread of the Asian region, which also includes Iran, I'll begin my presentation with a brief review of the context. We will then look at what we mean by open education today. I will then reflect on 3 pillars of openness and identify the key issues that have emerged from the changing perspectives. And in conclusion, we will explore the possible way forward. Since this is the first presentation of the conference, let us look at Asia today from the educational point of view. Asia is the largest and the most populous continent on the planet and home to 60% of the world's population. It has very large countries like China and India, as well as very small ones like the Maldives. A few countries such as Singapore, South Korea, and Japan are highly developed, rate very high on the Human Development Index, while the majority, unfortunately, rank very low. This unevenness in development is reflected in access to education in the different countries. While the Asian average of out-of-school children is only 5%, you see the red bar there, there are many countries where over 25% children are still out of school. And this is a kind of constant worry for governments. How do we bring these children back into schools? It's not just the children. Adult illiteracy in many Asian countries is over 25%. And how do we propose to mitigate this challenge? While the gross enrollment ratio in OECD countries is in the range of 40 to 50%, the Asian average barely exceeds 30%. In some countries, it is well below 15%, whereas the World Bank estimates that for any country to achieve sustainable development, participation in higher education must be in the range of 40 to 50%. So how will we increase access to larger numbers? Many governments believe that developments in technology could provide one potential solution. In the Asia-Pacific region, only 40% of the population has access to the internet, but it's changing very quickly. Now they say, the ITU report says it's 47%. But in some countries, it's less than 20%. Can this be a possible technology option for opening up education? In many countries, mobile devices are proving to be a game changer. The rapid rise of cell telephony and affordable tablets are making a contribution towards turning the digital divide into a dividend. While only 40% of the population in the Asia-Pacific region is connected to the internet, over 90% have access to mobile devices. And in fact, the outlook for the future, for the next 5 years, by an Ambient Insight report shows that in many countries, e-learning will not take off at all. People will leapfrog straight away to m-learning. So what is Asia then? We have seen that Asia is a very diverse rather than a homogeneous region. There is a vast disparity in the distribution of resources, which are manifested in uneven development across the region. Yet, within this diversity, we can see a thread of cultural unity. For example, yesterday when we saw the dances in the evening, I could see a family resemblance with some of the dances in India. The first dance, the Uya Oe, reminded me very much of the northeastern Naga dances, and the polka was very much similar to the dances that we have in Goa. So we are all, in a way, culturally interconnected. The region also places a high value and premium on education as a means for development. If this aspiration is to become a reality, there is a need for alternative approaches to accommodate the diverse educational requirements and infrastructures that exist in Asia. So opening up education for all is one way forward. What do we mean by open education? In Asia, when we speak of open education, we usually refer to open and distance learning or to open universities. Opening up education also means the massification and democratization of education for those hitherto kept outside its purview, and because women have traditionally been denied the opportunities for education in the region, opening up education also means reaching the unreached. Globally, the concept of open education has a wider and more contemporary connotation. As Tony Bates tells us, open education refers to education for all, which finished last year. You know, this was one of the Millennium Development Goal aspirations of the global community, which meant providing universal primary education for all. In addition to opening access to courses and programs, open education now includes open education resources, OER, open access research, open textbooks, and open data. As an ODL community, we have always understood that open education describes policies and practices that permit entry to learning with as few barriers as possible. The founding chancellor of the Open University of the UK, Lord Crowther, defined openness in relation to people, places, methods, and ideas. This forms the basis of what we mean by open education. Open education is a philosophic construct that advocates the removal of constraints and barriers to learning. Many open universities do not insist on entry qualifications, allow learners to accumulate credits at their own pace and convenience, and are flexible enough to allow learners to choose the courses they wish to study towards their qualification. As governments and policymakers sought to expand access to education, reduce costs, and improve standards, they realized that traditional brick and mortar solutions would not be enough. They began to invest in open universities, and there has been a huge growth of open universities in Asia, as we know. And I'm going to ask you to supplement my list. When I was looking last month in preparing this, I found 41 universities in Asia that are known specifically as open universities. If we are to count the number of institutions offering ODL in various forms, such as virtual universities, RTVUs, the radio and TV universities in China, dual mode universities, we will well exceed 1,000 institutions. And it's very difficult because this is very shifting terrain. So let us explore what some Asian universities mean by open education by looking at the mission statements. To begin with, our host institution, the UPOU, declares that its purpose is to provide wider access to quality higher education and to promote nationalistic commitment among its staff and students. The mission statement of the Open University of Malaysia is similar to the UPOU in widening access to quality education. But there's a slight difference because it goes beyond higher education to lifelong learning. The Open University of China claims openness as a core value and adds the dimension of opening up education through internationalization and the objective to become a world-class university, which is again a shift. Sukhothai Thammatirath Open University echoes the OUC's aspiration to become a world-class university that opens up opportunities for lifelong learning for all. So now we are beginning to have aspirations on the world stage and to expand our remit to embrace lifelong learning. For Hanoi Open University, the priorities are to open learning opportunities to quality education and to combine national and international concerns. My university, as you know that I got an honorary doctorate from the Open University of Sri Lanka, also speaks of access, quality, and affordability for lifelong learners. So if we look at what open education means by referring to the mission statements of these institutions, we find that it means increasing access to quality higher education and lifelong learning. It also emphasizes the need to provide affordable education and to open up education on an international scale and beyond national jurisdictions and geographical boundaries. As we have seen, openness is an evolving concept, and that there are varying degrees of openness in different institutions. So how do we further open up to embrace a wider diversity of needs and constituencies? Will this mean revisiting our mission statements to make them more contemporary to suit the needs of the 21st century? And this is a question I'm asking you, I don't have the answer. So let's move on to consider the three aspects of openness that will help institutions to open up education to meet the needs of developing Asian countries. The three aspects are interrelated and can be described as access, content, and technology. First, the issue of access. We could go back to 1840 when Sir Isaac Pitman used postcards to teach shorthand. This was followed by the University of London, or the People's University, which opened up education to people who would otherwise never have had the opportunity. It introduced the notion of higher education without boundaries in 1858, not just geographical boundaries, for its first external exams were held in Mauritius, but also boundaries of social class aspiring to reach the shoemaker in his garret. The external degrees became an influential model of openness and played a highly significant role in the establishment of several universities in the erstwhile colonies. The first external degree exams in Asia were held in the 1880s in Bombay, Calcutta, and Colombo. In the early 1890s, external exams were held for students in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. This was followed by the rise of correspondence education in Asia when Japan, China, India, and Sri Lanka opened up access to off-campus students. When the Open University UK was launched, the term open education became popular and became a model for many open universities around the world. It pioneered the team approach to course development, which included subject experts, media personnel, editors, etc., a division of labor that marks the industrial model of distance education. The OU has developed a reputation for the quality of its provision and is often ranked first in terms of student satisfaction in the UK. Today, again, please supplement my list. There are 10 mega universities in Asia which have thrown open the ivory towers of higher education to hundreds of thousands of students who would otherwise not have had this opportunity. In fact, over 10 million students have benefited from the OU system in Asia. So you might, I'm just counting the mega universities, it's much more than that. The Asian open universities have extended the model so successfully implemented by the OU UK. The China radio and TV universities have formed a nationwide open and distance learning system comprising the Open University of China and other open universities, provincial RTVUs, RTVU branches at the municipal level, and RTVU workstations at the county level, and instructional classes or nodes. The entire systems has at least 5 of what we know as mega universities and which are not included in this list. The Open University of Malaysia is another model, different model, shows how a consortium of public and private institutions can lead to a win-win situation for all. Allama Iqbal Open University adapted the model to its own context. It added 2 new dimensions by providing secondary education through its open school and introducing skills development as part of its extension activities. IGNOU, my former university, is a mega university which has the largest number of student enrollments and offers the largest number of programs in India. These have often become the basis for many courses offered by the 16 state open universities in the country. One of the barriers to opening up higher education is the issue of costs, and it's not just in the US or in the West. Asian education is very high, costs very high, if we look at the amount it costs as a percentage of the average income in 2015. 61% of the average income in Japan, over 95% in South Korea, this is over a 4-year degree program, nearly 100% in China, nearly 350% in Indonesia, and 500% in India. Even though families want to invest in educating their children, as is the practice in Asia, can they really afford it? We can say that OUs have increased access by cutting the costs of education and offering more flexible opportunities. Therefore, access will continue to remain a priority issue going forward, and the role of ODL will be more important than ever before. Now we come to the second pillar. Can the use of free content help us cut down the costs of education? As we know, there has been a phenomenal growth of OER in the last 10 years. OER, we know, are educational materials which are free and freely available. OER can be reused and repurposed to suit different needs and can be available in any medium, print, audio, video, digital. But one key difference between OER and other educational resources is that OER have an open license which allows adaptation and reuse without having to request the copyright holder. While the US played a leadership role in initiating OER with the MIT's Open Courseware Initiative, Rice University's connections, many Asian governments and other stakeholders are investing in the development of OER to open up quality education content. Some notable initiatives are listed here: OER Asia, Chinese OER, Indian National Repository of OER, Virtual University of Pakistan, Open Courseware, and Japan OCW. I mean, there are many. Hanoi does it, and so many others. Vietnam's Open Courseware Initiative. And our host, the UPOU, is leading discussions on policy and practice in this field. And Patricia is our person. Several countries are developing OER policies. So far, there is no OER policy at the national level in Asia, while there are institutional policies in Bangladesh, Open University, 4 open universities in India, Sri Lanka, and Wawasan Open University, Malaysia, as well as project-level policies in India, and there may be many others. Often, up to 80% of faculty time is spent in course development. the use of OER can free some of this time for more student support and lower the cost of programs or course fees. Open universities can develop OER policies and build the capacity of their staff to harness the potential of OER. So the rise of OER signals 3 shifts for ODL institutions. Traditionally, open universities had an industrial model. The open universities of the future will be a more connected model. There were course development teams within open universities responsible for creating content. Now the teams will be dispersed around the globe and will adapt existing OER. And finally, and more importantly, the rise of OER will encourage the student to be a producer rather than a consumer of content. But OER are not the only means of opening up education. Laura is sitting here. The Cape Town Declaration in 2007 is a visionary document that identifies the other dimensions of openness. It refers to open technologies that promote more collaboration and flexibility, better approaches to pedagogy, assessment, and accreditation. The third pillar of openness is technology, one manifestation of which is the MOOC platform, which allows us to offer online courses to thousands of students around the world for free. MOOCs are an important solution to 3 key challenges in the current education system. 1, that it is rigid. 2, it is highly expensive. And 3, it takes a lot of time to complete. Top universities have taken the lead in offering MOOCs to a world deprived of quality education at a low cost. How will MOOCs impact open universities? We are witnessing a steady growth of MOOCs in Asia. Peking University offers Chinese MOOCs for students and members of the public. JMOOC, of which the Open University of Japan is an active member, targets homemakers and senior citizens. And Malaysian MOOCs, supported by the Ministry of Higher Education, are meant for students and members of the public. India has developed Swayam, a MOOC platform that will open up opportunities for free quality education around the country. And yesterday we saw the launch of the Asian MOOCs, which is a groundbreaking initiative of AAOU. Our hosts, the UPOU, are offering MOOCs to provide training in skills related to call center services and basic nursing. So how are MOOCs impacting open universities? Here again, we see 3 key developments. Open universities have so far largely operated within national or regional jurisdictions. With the MOOC platform, the world becomes a connected classroom. Students had limited interactions with tutors in study centers. Today, there is a greater emphasis on peer-to-peer interactions and the use of social media. Open universities will increasingly make use of emerging technologies to support their learners. And open universities are well placed to engage with both OER and MOOCs, and they have expertise in this area because their experience in content design and development can easily lead to effective adoption and adaptation of OER. Student supports can be strengthened by adapting MOOC technologies, but as we know, all MOOCs are not open unless you make the content OER. So far, mostly the majority of MOOCs are closed. What has been the Asian contribution to both OER and MOOCs? Let me just identify 3. 1, breaking the language barrier of English-only content to local languages. So you have MOOCs in Chinese and so on. 2, adopting a more blended approach in MOOCs rather than offering a purely online experience. There is face-to-face opportunities. And 3, harnessing appropriate technologies such as mobile devices and phones to reach remote communities. Let us now look at the changing priorities today at the international, national, and institutional levels. But first, the international level. As you know, the international community has identified and adopted 17 Sustainable Goals or SDGs last year, with Goal 4 focusing on education. The objective of this goal is to, and I quote, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all, unquote, by 2030. The priority for the Millennium Development Goals in 2000 was to commit the global community to providing universal primary education for all. Now the emphasis has shifted to tertiary education and lifelong learning, quality, and equity and social inclusion. Open and distance learning will have a key role to play and can be effectively deployed to support the achievement of sustainable development at the national level. You'll be interested to see this, that the global community recognizes this and proposes in the UNESCO Framework for Action that more countries should develop policies for providing quality distance tertiary education and use MOOCs and other technologies to enhance quality and access. I think it's time for us to take a leadership role and show the way. The second changed priority which we notice now is the focus on skills at the national level. Globally, there is a huge gap between the skills we teach our graduates and the skills required by employers. In earlier days, a university degree was quite enough. Now, employers are more demanding, and according to a recent survey, over 80% of the firms in Japan said it was difficult to find qualified employees. In India, it was over 60% and over 20% in China. So how can open universities address this situation? And some very nice models, Guangdong Open University, etc., emerging in China itself, where they have this kind of interface with industry, with government, and the labor market. India plans to skill 400 million people by 2020. As Prime Minister Modi says, we need to develop skills with speed and at scale if we want our young people to contribute to national development. Now, we are experts in ODL and blended approaches. We need to deploy this expertise for national development. The third priority, which is at the institutional level, is to recognize and accredit the skills and competencies acquired through various learning pathways and in various jurisdictions. MOOCs can never fully open up education unless there is a robust system of evaluation, recognition, and credit transfer in place. Malaysia has taken the lead in developing such a system, and this is the next frontier for MOOCs, and how can we take the lead? So what then can we do as open universities and ODL providers? First, embrace lifelong learning and strengthen our outreach function. You know, a university has three functions: teaching, research, outreach. We have been a little weak and not given enough attention to the outreach function to open up education to wider constituencies, especially the unreached. Lifelong learning includes the whole spectrum of formal, non-formal, and informal learning. How do we recognize and accredit non-formal learning? The second strategy is that in order to promote skills development, it is important to develop need-based courses that open up opportunities for livelihoods. This can be done in partnership with industry and the service sector, which then gets trained human resources. Industry partnership is essential to create curricula that are appropriate and relevant to make learners have employment or entrepreneurship opportunities. The third step would be to train staff in the different aspects of effective distance learning delivery. Capacity building in curriculum, effective learner support, assessment techniques, and the adoption and adaptation of OER and MOOCs could be some areas of focus. So finally, what would it take to further open up education in Asia? Would it be visionary leadership, more training and retraining of staff, better collaboration and resource sharing. I'm sure you'll discuss and debate these issues over the next 2 days. And with that, let me thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.